So I thought I'd explain the dew point a little bit more, since in the last video we talked about it. What is a dew point? And the dew point is an easy way to understand how much moisture is in the air. So here's a picture of two individuals, one in an environment with a high dew point or high moisture in the air. And in this circumstance, when there's high moisture, it makes it difficult for sweat to evaporate. So it makes you feel sort of miserable when there's really high humidity or a high dew point. When there's a low dew point, things change, because if you're sweating, water evaporation will occur a lot easier because the air is drier, so the water has somewhere to go. You normally see morning dew, for example, because you have that hot air mass that was cooled overnight, and so the water will go ahead and condense out of the air. So you'll see the water become liquid and deposit on surfaces, especially the cold surfaces. Little charts for us human beings, what our comfort level might be for different dew points. If the dew point is under 50, it's considered dry or very dry. And as the dew points go higher and higher, there's more moisture in the air, so it becomes more and more comfortable up to a point where it really gets overwhelming, like if you're living in Houston, for example. So the other circumstance where the dew point plays a role is when you bring a cold beverage out in the during a hot, humid day. The beverage, if it's colder than the dew point temperature, then you will begin to have the moisture that is in the air. Once it hits this cold surface, it will condense the water that's in the air, so you see the condensation being created. And you can sort of think of this as your bee cocoon. So if you have a cold bee cocoon and you bring it out into a warm atmosphere, so for example it's in the fridge and you pull it in your house where it may have a lot of warm, humid air, then you may have condensation start to accumulate on your cocoons. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. So that's why dew point is an interesting thing to keep track of. So how do I know the dew point in my area? Wonderground is a great way to look at data. If you hit the 10-day tab, so usually when it comes up it's on today. If you go to the 10-day tab, then you can see the trend over the next 10 days. If you want to see what the dew point is, it's this green trend plotted here, and you see the 32-degree line. You can see that it's below 32 for a while, and then on Monday it's around 32 or 33. It's the green number, the second one down on this bar. And then drops back down a little bit, goes up to 37, crosses back down 32, goes all the way down to 11, etc., etc. When we want to change the bee air in the fridge, we want to grab air that's around this dew point. So let's say it's 32, you can see the actual at 11 p.m. on Monday, 35 degrees for the actual temperature. And if you look down below, I guess I could try to get there. This green down here trend, this 88% or so, is the humidity, and the green 32 up above is the dew point. If you keep your fridge at 40 degrees, let's say, you can see here there's 40 degrees outside temperature. The 40 is the top number in red. You would see the dew point is 37 and the humidity is 90%. That would be a little too humid for the bees. If you come back on the back side of this, or let's say right when it crosses 32, you can see how your moisture has dropped to 61%, which at 45F it's 61%, but if you bring it down to 40, it will be about the right range for the bees. So that's why it's easy to just pick the points where the dew point is 32, and you can be pretty sure that your bees will be in good shape. So here's maybe an ideal example. on Friday at 11 a.m. It's 42 degrees outside. The dew point is 32. Your humidity is 66%. So this would be a good time to change the air in your sealed container for the bees. And then you can see the next opportunities as these cross. So that's one way. Another way is Windy.com. This is a really amazing website. You can see the simulation run, for example, for a particular parameter. If we want to see rain, and we can play this and we can see, for example, the ice storm that's going to hit Houston here, and then these little exclamation points are ahead of the snow coming in. So here's a little more ice coming in on Tuesday. That's pretty interesting. And then if you want to switch to dew point, for example, you can see how the dew point is changing over time for your area. The 32-degree dew point is around this green edge, and so everything else is a little bit too dry. This cold front sort of advancing all the way to the Gulf Coast, and then you can see the really dry mass coming behind it. For example, mason bees that have been roaming around in Texas and in Louisiana are going to see this really cold snap. If we look at the tree pollen for Texas and Louisiana, it was just barely getting in there. It's probably not going to affect a lot of the mason bees, but of course if we were a little bit further along in the season, it might have had more of an effect. We'll take a look at Wonderground for Houston, Texas. And if you flip to the 10-day trend, even in Houston, Texas, and this is the Hobby Airport basically, that the dew point, 32, stays below freezing for a while until Saturday or so, where it gets back to a normal level. But it's unusual to have such cold and dry air. So I guess 8 a.m. on Monday, the purple line is what it feels like. So it'll feel like 6 degrees because there's a little bit of wind, a 17-mile-per-hour wind or so. And then the same thing at 8 a.m. on Tuesday is fairly cold. So that's about dew point. Hopefully that explains everything you need to know. We'll go through the rest of the simulation on Windy to see how far this cold air mass is going, and it looks like it's going to do the entire United States from coast to coast. So hopefully near the end of the week it will back off. The other thing you can see is precipitation type, so you can see the rain versus the snow. The other interesting thing here is the freezing altitude. So you can see at what altitude you have freezing weather, and if it's in this area, you can right click, you can do a local. So at 0 feet altitude it's freezing apparently. So if we go back here, and we can see this freezing front move in. So in Florida you can have a picker and you can see the freezing altitude is 12,500 feet. Maybe in this corner of Pennsylvania it's at 6,500 feet. And then if we proceed, you sort of see how that changes. So you can sort of see a little band here as the cold weather. Clouds is another thing you can see. There's all kinds of visibility is also pretty interesting if you're trying to gauge how much moisture is in the air. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and you can understand a little bit better about how dry the air can be and how to know when the dew point in your area is around 32. And if you replace the bee air every month with 32-degree dew point air, then everything should be okay for the moisture. It'll make sure that your bees are not developing too much condensation on them, where they may potentially rot or have mold or mildew, and keep your bees nice and healthy without drying them out, because the bees are still breathing, and just like humans, when we exhale, there's a lot of moisture. We lose a lot of moisture in the dry air because we don't inhale the moisture, we only exhale moisture. So the effect is it essentially dries you out. So maybe in the next video we'll take a look at actually changing the bee air maybe in a couple days.